Number 10. Leanne Bauman. In March 2021, 44-year-old Leanne Bauman from Missouri allegedly planned to kill her daughter's grandma. The woman was a Botox-loving middle-aged realtor living in suburbia. According to Leanne herself, she was a pistol-packing cheer mom. News got out that Leanne had apparently tried to hire a hitman to murder her mother-in-law. A text message was even sent to the woman's daughter saying that grandma wouldn't be alive for much longer. In her own mind, she felt like she had a pretty good motive to take out the 74-year-old. A few years before, Leanne had gotten divorced. She thought that her ex and his mom were going to take custody of her 2 children. This, along with audio recordings of Leanne discussing her evil plans with a friend, was enough for police officers to arrest the successful realtor. After she was taken into custody, her ex-husband was quickly given an order of protection against the suspect. He claims that during their marriage, he suffered through years of abuse. In one case, the man said Leanne even pulled a gun on him during an argument. But there are some people on the woman's side. Her boyfriend, Serafino Kazani, says that Leanne's a kind person with a good heart. Other friends insist she was framed for the crime by a former pal, the same woman who gave the audio of her plans to the cops. As of January 2023, charges against Leanne have been dropped. It's likely that the ex-friend misunderstood the accused after a night of ranting about her former relationships. In a statement to the press, Leanne said, "Thanks to Camden County for recognizing that I never intended anyone actual harm." Number 9. Rebekah Gould. On September 20th, 2004, a young woman named Rebekah Gould vanished into thin air. She'd picked up her boyfriend to take him to work shortly before her disappearance, but according to him, nothing seemed off. A little later that same day, she was seen at a small convenience store in Arkansas, but then all traces of her went cold. After being reported missing, detectives searched the home she'd been staying at and found large amounts of blood. It didn't take long for Gould's dead body to show up near the side of the highway. For over 16 years, Gould's case went unsolved. All of the woman's belongings were left behind, and it seemed like she died from a single head injury. No leads came until 2020, when 44-year-old William Alama Miller was arrested. Back in 2004, the man was visiting Izard County where Gould was killed. The victim's sister says that William was the cousin of a man Gould had previously dated. He apparently knocked on the door of the residence where she'd been living and politely asked to use the phone. Out of kindness, the victim let the man inside and gave him some privacy to place the call. Sadly, William used this time to grab a piano leg out of the living room. He then confronted Gould and beat her to death with the object. While in court, the judge overseeing William's case said that the killer was exceptionally remorseless and cold. It seemed like he felt no real guilt for what he did. In the end, the man was sentenced to 40 years in prison for the murder of Rebekah Gould. Number 8. Joseph ELLEDGE. In October 2019, 28-year-old Mengshi Ji went missing in Columbia, Missouri. Her husband, Joseph ELLEDGE, was the one who reported her disappearance. For months, police and community members tirelessly searched for the Chinese woman who'd moved to the States to pursue an education at the University of Missouri. Finally, in March 2020, her remains were discovered in a park. As investigators started looking into the case, evidence slowly started to present itself. A few days before Ji's death, Joseph discovered that his wife had been having inappropriate conversations with a man in her home country. He found out that the two of them had exchanged sexually explicit messages with each other. The married couple's relationship was also strained due to the fact that Ji's parents had recently started living with them after the birth of their granddaughter. Prosecutors found multiple posts on social media and even a journal that documented the rocky union. It seems that they frequently argued, and Joseph openly criticized his wife often. During a court trial, he gave a bit more insight into how Ji died. According to him, the death was entirely accidental. On October 8th, Joseph allegedly pushed her, causing her to hit her head. The next morning, he claimed that he found the woman dead in their bed. He told the court that he had no idea what to do, so he just wrapped the body up and put it in his car trunk. At this point, he hadn't reported her missing yet. A day later, with his baby daughter in the back seat, he drove to the park he proposed to Ji at and buried her. After hours of deliberation, the jury on Joseph's case found him guilty of second-degree murder, and in late 2022, he was sentenced to 28 years in prison for the crime. Number 7. The FEENEY family. One weekend in February 1995, a mother and 2 young children were brutally killed inside their Springfield home. The bodies of Cheryl Feeney, her 6-year-old son Tyler, and her infant daughter Jennifer were discovered by the woman's mother-in-law and co-worker, Ola. The older 2 victims appeared to have been beaten to death with a strong metal pipe, while the youngest had been strangled with a curtain rod cord. The husband and father of the deceased claimed that he was not in the city at the time of the murders. The Glendale High School science teacher said he was attending a work conference when his family was killed. His home had been turned upside down by investigators, so John Feeney stayed with some relatives as the search for a killer continued. Many were quick to point their fingers at the husband, who'd conveniently been away during the murder. Court prosecutors made the argument that role-playing games John took part in drove him to take his family's lives. He'd apparently participated in a game called Vampires of the Masquerade. Some said this drove the father to the extreme, forcing him to assume a killer's role. Although Matt Fairley, one of John's close friends, thought this claim was ridiculous. He told investigators that he'd played similar games with the accused for over a decade and had never noticed anything strange about him. Other arguments about John's strange behavior included his promiscuity with other teachers. He'd allegedly been sexually involved with other faculty members in the past. It was also strange that he took out a substantial $250,000 insurance policy on his wife within a year of her death. Ultimately, there was not enough evidence to convict the man of killing his family. To his credit, John did seem genuinely shocked when he found out about the murders, and many who knew the man said he was a good husband and father to his children. Almost 30 years later, the question still stands. If John didn't kill Cheryl and the kids, who did? Unfortunately, since this case is one of the most famous cold cases out of the Ozarks, we may never know the answer. Number 6. Ashley Dawn Cameron. 35-year-old Ashley Dawn Cameron from Polk County, Missouri, has been accused of child abuse. On December 31, 2022, the woman was taken into custody in the early morning hours. According to some reports, a 14-year-old was killed thanks to Cameron's negligence. After receiving multiple injuries, the child lost their life because they weren't taken to a hospital to receive medical treatment. Over a year ago in February 2021, Cameron acted in a similar way. She'd refused to take the teenager to the hospital despite being asked several times by the child themselves. With these actions, court documents say she knowingly acted in a manner that created a substantial risk to the minor in question. Since this case is still very recent, there's very little public information about it available. The charges brought up against Cameron include 2 felonies: abuse of a child resulting in death and child endangerment resulting in death. She's currently being held in the Polk County Jail on a $100,000 bond while prosecutors gather more evidence against her. Would you rather find out that your young child is gathering roadkill for their personal science experiments, or discover that your 16-year-old daughter has a shady older boyfriend? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. Number 5. REBEKAH RUUD. In 2017, Savannah Leckie, a 16-year-old Missouri girl, died as a result of negligence. Her mother, REBEKAH RUUD, was charged at the time for her daughter's death. She was taken into police custody after the victim's burnt body was discovered in a burn pit on RUUD's property. In court, the mother fully admitted to finding her child dead inside a trailer. She claimed she wasn't the one who killed her though, and only burnt her body after making the grim discovery. The woman's defense argued that the young child took her own life. After disposing of the remains, the community spent 15 days searching for Savannah, and RUUD knew exactly what had happened the whole time. After spending over 5 years in jail during the trial, the murder charges against RUUD were dropped. She was convicted of abandoning a corpse, but the maximum prison sentence for that is only 4 years. Because of this, the woman's defense asked to be given credit for the time she'd already served. It was granted, and the accused now walks free. Number 4. Jacob SAYRE. 17-year-old Jacob SAYRE from Missouri is no stranger to drugs. The teen from the Ozarks was charged with second-degree murder in September 2022. Earlier in the month, he sold fentanyl to an impressionable 16-year-old girl. Unfortunately, she went home and took the drug. Not long after, she was found dead in her room with a little blue pill beside her. SAYRE was identified after investigators looked through the victim's phone history. They found messages on Snapchat between the young man and woman talking about an arranged perk purchase. In his own defense, SAYRE claimed that the pill he sold the girl was one he got from a friend. This person was allegedly someone the boy trusted and knew from his church in Springfield. Despite this, charges are still being pursued, and if he's found guilty, SAYRE could spend the rest of his life in jail. Number 3. The SCHWARTZ Boys. The Amish are groups of people who willingly abstain from technology and outside world influences in the name of religious beliefs. In North America alone, there's about 350,000 Amish people, and in these tight-knit communities, there's a lot happening that we don't know about. In September 2020, 2 young boys were sentenced to serve 15 years in prison after sexually assaulting their 12-year-old sister. 18-year-old Petty Schwartz and 22-year-old Aaron Schwartz from Webster County, Missouri, were caught after their little sister spoke with a doctor. After discovering she was pregnant, the girl told her physician that her brothers had been taking advantage of her. The doctor then reported the incident to the authorities. Petty and Aaron were charged in this case because they're adults, but the victim was also sexually assaulted by 2 of her other brothers who are minors. The charges of child molestation were originally suspended in favor of the young men receiving probation, but they violated it within 3 short days. As part of the probation terms, they weren't supposed to have any contact with their sister at all. After being released, though, the SCHWARTZ boys immediately moved back into their family's home. Because of this, they were arrested and are now serving time behind bars for their crimes. The victim ended up having the child, and unfortunately, it still seems like justice hasn't fully been served in this disturbing case out of the Ozarks. Number 2. Matthew DEDMON. It's disheartening when community leaders break the trust of those who look up to them. An Ozark pastor named Matthew DEDMON is one example of this. The 47-year-old man discovered that his wife was having an affair. This news would have been enough to send any sane person over the edge. On May 28, 2022, he noticed his spouse inside a restaurant with her lover in broad daylight. He went up to the 2 of them filled with rage, and he confronted his wife about her infidelity. The situation quickly escalated as the angry pastor pulled out a gun. Matthew fired several times at Joe Newburn and struck him 3 times. Police and first responders got there as quickly as they could to transport the man to the hospital. While getting treatment, Newburn fell victim to his injuries. The Heritage Baptist Church pastor was arrested and is currently being held at the Christian County Detention Center as the case proceeds. Number 1. David Berry. In 2018, 29-year-old David Berry from Missouri was sentenced to prison for the role he played in a group of illegal deer poachers. Over a period of at least 3 years, the men, including Berry's father, brothers, and others, hunted and killed countless deer. After an investigation was launched in 2016, police realized the poachers had broken all kinds of strict state hunting laws. They used unauthorized and illegal weapons, and even hit deer with their cars for sport. One terrible method they used to get their kill involved using extremely bright lights to blind animals into standing still. Then they could swoop in and nab them. Other times, they would chop off deer's heads and leave the rest of the body to rot in the woods. It's believed that they took the lives of nearly 1,200 deer through illegal means. Part of Berry's year-long jail sentence has caught the eye of people all over. As punishment for his cruel actions, Judge Robert E. Greene ordered that Berry watch the classic Disney film Bambi at least once a month while incarcerated. If you're unfamiliar, the movie features a baby deer navigating life after its mother was brutally killed by hunters. Do you know of any other true crime cases out of the Ozarks? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on The Bad Badger.